A young woman boldly asked Kim Kardashian for a job in public. But the response she received was completely unexpected and left everyone speechless. The neon lights of the city stretched endlessly, illuminating the streets of New York City like an urban constellation. Outside the Grand Hall, the scent of freshly brewed coffee mixed with the unmistakable aroma of fine perfume and freshly ironed designer clothing. The air was electric, filled with the hum of excited chatter and camera flashes as the elite gathered for one of the most anticipated events of the year, the annual Luxury Fashion Gala. Inside, the atmosphere was dense with anticipation. Each guest, draped in extravagant outfits, exuded the wealth and fame that everyone had come to associate with New York's finest. There was a buzz in the room, a palpable energy that suggested something big was about to happen. And at the center of it all, a star shone brighter than the rest. Kim Kardashian. She stood at the head of the stage, radiant in a custom-made gown that glittered with diamonds, her perfectly styled hair falling effortlessly around her shoulders. The cameras seemed to follow her every move, and her face, flawless and composed, was projected on every screen in the room. But as all eyes were fixed on Kim, a single, small figure stood at the very edge of the crowd, fighting to keep her composure. Maya, a young woman, was not part of this glittering world. She wasn't draped in designer couture, nor did she have the fortune of being surrounded by an entourage. Her clothes were modest, her shoes worn, but her heart beat with a fervent hope that today could be her turning point. Maya's palms were clammy, her heart racing in her chest as she struggled to steady herself. She had planned for this moment over and over in her mind, running through the words, rehearsing them until they felt like they were etched into her soul. But now that she was here, in this moment, surrounded by the world's most powerful and successful people, doubt had crept in. Her stomach twisted into knots, and the weight of her reality seemed to press down on her chest. She had already faced so many failures in her life. Rejection, humiliation, loneliness. The constant feeling that she wasn't enough. Just a few months ago, she had lost her job when the marketing company she had worked for went under. Despite the years of hard work and dedication she had put in, the company had declared bankruptcy and let her go without a second thought. It wasn't just her job she lost. It was her sense of security, her place in the world, and the belief she had in herself. The friends she had once considered family had also betrayed her when she was at her lowest. They drifted away, too absorbed in their own lives to offer any help or empathy when Maya needed it most. She had stood on the edge of her own despair, abandoned and broken. But now, standing in front of Kim Kardashian, a woman who embodied success in every sense of the word, Maya felt a flicker of hope, a sliver of belief that maybe, just maybe, this moment could change everything. She had to try. She had to take this chance. The crowd around her seemed to disappear as her thoughts narrowed in on her singular mission. Maya's breath hitched as she made her way toward the front of the stage. She could feel her heart thudding in her ears as she took each step, her feet barely making a sound on the polished floor. She was just another face in the sea of glittering onlookers, but she didn't care. She had to make herself visible. She had to make Kim see her. Standing there, just a few feet from the stage, Maya's nerves almost got the better of her. Her hands trembled as she wiped away the sweat from her palms, and her throat felt dry, as though the weight of the words she was about to speak would crush her. But she knew she couldn't back down now. Not when everything she had dreamed of hinged on this one moment. With a deep breath, she finally summoned the courage to speak. Her voice was barely a whisper at first, but it carried with a mixture of desperation and hope. "Kim, please. I need your help. I need a job. I'll do anything. Please." The words felt like a prayer, an offering, and Maya could hear the catch in her voice, the vulnerability seeping through the facade she had built. Her heart pounded fiercely against her ribs as she stood there, waiting. waiting for something, a chance, an answer, anything that would pull her from the dark hole she had been trapped in for far too long. Kim Kardashian had been giving her speech, her face painted with the usual polished expression that people had come to expect. The perfect smile, the perfect posture, the perfect life. But as Kim's eyes fell on Maya, something seemed to shift in the air. There was a flicker of recognition, but it was fleeting, almost dismissive, before Kim's gaze moved to someone else in the crowd. The sound of cameras clicking intensified, and for a brief moment, Maya felt invisible once again. But then, the microphone picked up Kim's voice, and Maya's heart froze. "I'm sorry," Kim said, her tone crisp, cold even. "But I don't hire people from the crowd. This is not how things work." The words hit Maya with the force of a freight train. They felt like a slap to the face, the sting of rejection overwhelming her in a way she could never have anticipated. The world around her seemed to blur, the sound of laughter and hushed conversations melding into a deafening silence that only she could hear. Maya's breath caught in her throat, her hands shaking uncontrollably. She stood there, exposed, humiliated, her knees trembling as she fought the urge to collapse onto the floor. The eyes of the crowd now turned to her, some filled with curiosity, others with amusement. Maya could feel their gaze like 1,000 tiny needles pricking her skin. She was nothing. Just another person who dared to dream too big, only to be crushed by the cold, hard reality that people like Kim Kardashian lived in a world where others were invisible, insignificant. Kim's smile never faltered as she moved on with her speech, oblivious to the emotional devastation that her words had caused. But Maya could not move. She could not leave. She was stuck in that moment, in that painful, soul-crushing moment where everything she had worked for, everything she had hoped for, seemed to slip through her fingers like sand. Her mind raced, and in the pit of her stomach, she felt a dark seed of doubt grow. "You're nothing," it whispered. "You'll never be enough. You'll never belong." Maya stood motionless, her body still trembling with the weight of Kim's rejection, until at last, she managed to turn away. She didn't look back. She couldn't. The pain was too raw. It was too much to bear. And yet, in that painful silence, something inside her began to stir. It was faint at first, barely a whisper against the storm of her emotions. But it was there. A question. A realization. A small, quiet seed of defiance. This wasn't the end. This wasn't the end of her story. Maya's feet barely touched the ground as she made her way out of the lavish venue. Each step felt heavy, like the weight of the world was pushing her down. The dazzling lights of the gala blurred behind her as her heart continued to race, pounding so loud in her ears that she couldn't hear the hushed conversations around her. She stumbled slightly, her eyes focused on nothing, lost in the tidal wave of emotions crashing through her. Rejection. Shame. Self-doubt. The air outside was crisp, but it did nothing to soothe the burning in her chest. She had done it. She had stood up in front of one of the most powerful women in the world, and she had asked for help. She had put herself out there, exposed her vulnerability, and for what? To be told, in front of a crowd of judgmental eyes, that she wasn't worth the time of someone like Kim Kardashian? The sting of Kim's words still echoed in her mind. "I don't hire people from the crowd. This is not how things work." Maya had always been told to follow her dreams, to believe in herself, to take chances. But in that moment, she had learned an unforgiving truth: the world wasn't as kind as the fairy tales. There were rules, invisible barriers that separated people like Kim Kardashian from people like her. And she was on the wrong side of that divide. Maya had been raised in a small, quiet town in upstate New York. She had always been the dreamer, the one with her head in the clouds, imagining a life far beyond the town's faded streets. As a child, she would often look out the window, staring at the endless horizon, wondering what lay beyond. Her mother, a hard-working single parent, had always encouraged her to dream big, to aim for the stars. But life wasn't easy. Money was tight, and they lived in a modest apartment on the second floor of an aging building. Yet, Maya never complained. She believed that one day she would escape that life, that her hard work would pay off, and she would make something of herself. When she was young, she found solace in books, novels about people who overcame impossible odds, stories about the underdog who fought for success. She read about people like Kim Kardashian, who seemed to have everything she had ever wanted. Fame, wealth, power, everything Maya could only dream of. At times, it seemed like the perfect world, one where all of Maya's hopes could come true if she just worked hard enough. She poured herself into her studies, and as she grew older, she developed a passion for marketing. After graduating from college, Maya landed a job at a mid-level marketing agency in New York City. It wasn't glamorous, but it was a step up. She felt a sense of pride when she moved into her first apartment on the Upper East Side, a tiny studio that smelled faintly of takeout and cheap detergent, but it was hers. She had made it. She was climbing the ladder. But the harshness of the world was quick to remind her that success wasn't guaranteed, no matter how much you believed in yourself. After a few years, the company she had worked so hard for declared bankruptcy, and suddenly, Maya found herself without a job, without a sense of direction, and with no safety net. The city she had once considered her dream had become an intimidating maze, and she was lost in it. As if the job loss wasn't enough, the betrayal of her closest friends sent Maya into a downward spiral. She had leaned on them, shared her fears, her struggles, and her hopes. But when things got tough, they vanished. They didn't have the time or the energy to help her when she needed it most. They'd gone on with their lives, leaving her behind. That's when the loneliness set in. She spent days in her apartment, staring at the walls, wondering where it all went wrong. She felt as if she was a shadow, just one more person in the crowd, invisible and unimportant. Each rejection, each failed opportunity piled on top of the last, making her question everything about herself. Her mother tried to offer support, but even she seemed too tired, too defeated to provide the kind of encouragement Maya needed. They had always relied on each other, but Maya could feel the exhaustion in her mother's voice whenever they spoke. The one person who had believed in her was starting to lose hope. But despite the crushing weight of the circumstances, Maya refused to completely give up. She tried to pull herself out of the rut, applied to job after job, each application rejected, each interview a reminder of how far she had fallen. She was struggling to pay bills, facing mounting debt, and yet, she couldn't stop herself from dreaming. She couldn't silence the voice that told her there was more out there, that if she just pushed hard enough, something would change. That's when she saw the announcement about the gala. Kim Kardashian would be speaking there, and for Maya, it was a golden opportunity. It was her last chance to prove that she wasn't just a failure, that she wasn't invisible. This was her shot. The idea of asking Kim Kardashian for a job, for a chance, felt like a long shot. But the desperation that had consumed her life for the past few years pushed her to act. Kim had built an empire, she was everything Maya aspired to be. If she could somehow make a connection, if Kim could just see her, maybe, just maybe, there would be a way out of the dark. Maya had rehearsed the moment in her mind 1,000 times. She had imagined walking up to Kim with confidence, saying the right words, securing her chance. She imagined Kim listening, nodding in understanding, and offering her a job, a place in her world. A fairy tale ending. But none of that had happened. Instead, Maya found herself humiliated, her heart crushed by the cold, dismissive words Kim had thrown her way. The rejection had come so swiftly, so unexpectedly. In front of so many people. Maya stood there, exposed and vulnerable, like a fragile flower trampled underfoot. Her chest felt hollow, her self-worth slipping further and further away with each passing second. "You're just not good enough," the voice in her head whispered. "You'll never make it. You'll never be what you want to be." For the first time in a long while, Maya felt like giving up. But as she stood there in the chaos of her emotions, she felt something else. Something faint, but growing. A spark, a flicker of anger and determination. She didn't know what it was yet, but it was there. And it was the one thing that might save her. Maya walked out of the gala, but in her mind, the fight was just beginning. The cold breeze of the New York night bit at Maya's skin as she stood on the sidewalk, her hands shoved deep into the pockets of her worn-out jacket. The weight of her failure clung to her like a heavy fog, suffocating any remaining shred of hope she had left. As the glittering lights of the city swirled around her, they felt distant, unreachable. The promise of a better life, the dream she had nurtured for years, seemed to evaporate with each breath she took. She didn't know where to go or what to do next. The grand event was still in full swing behind her, with laughter and music spilling out into the night, but it might as well have been another world. Maya had never felt more alone. She had asked Kim Kardashian for help, thinking that maybe this one person, with all her wealth, fame, and influence, could offer her the lifeline she so desperately needed. She had imagined a moment of grace, a recognition of her potential, a chance to rise from the ashes of her failed career. But instead, she had been met with cold indifference, a dismissal that shattered her already fragile self-esteem. The cruel irony of it all made her stomach churn. Kim Kardashian, someone who had built an empire from the ground up, but whose journey was paved with privilege, had turned her down in front of an entire room of people, as if Maya was just another nameless face in the crowd, undeserving of any kind of attention. She tried to shake off the feeling, but the weight of it settled deep into her bones. Rejection had always been a familiar companion, but this time it felt different. This time, it wasn't just about losing a job or an opportunity. It was about losing her belief in herself. Maya wandered aimlessly, her feet taking her through the streets she had once dreamed of conquering. But the city, once so full of promise, now felt like a labyrinth of disappointment. She passed high-end shops, their windows showcasing designer labels and luxury items that she would never be able to afford. The sound of expensive cars zooming by and the laughter of strangers filled the air, but none of it mattered to her anymore. The distance between her and the life she had hoped to live felt like an insurmountable chasm. She found herself in front of a small cafe, the warm glow of its interior contrasting with the coldness of the night. Without thinking, she stepped inside. The barista gave her a polite nod as she walked to the counter, ordering the first thing that came to her mind, a cup of coffee. As she waited, she leaned against the counter, her mind replaying Kim's words over and over again. "I don't hire people from the crowd. This is not how things work." The words stung like salt on an open wound. They echoed in her mind, amplifying the sense of failure that had lodged itself in her chest. She didn't belong. She had never belonged in the world she had dreamed of. And Kim had just made it abundantly clear. Her coffee arrived, and she took it with a quiet thank you, retreating to a corner table. As she sat down, her hands trembled as she lifted the mug to her lips. The warmth of the drink barely registered as she stared into the steaming liquid, the swirling patterns of coffee mirroring the chaos in her mind. It was then that the voice inside her began to stir. It was faint at first, a whisper, almost drowned out by the heaviness of her thoughts. But it was there, an ember of resistance, a quiet defiance against the crushing weight of her self-doubt. "You are not this moment. You are not this rejection. You are not defined by Kim Kardashian or anyone else who dismisses you." Maya clenched her fists on the table, her knuckles white. The thought that she had let Kim's cold words define her, even for a moment, was infuriating. No, she thought, this isn't the end. It can't be. I'm better than this. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath, focusing on the sensation of the warm mug in her hands. She didn't know how yet, but she knew something had to change. She couldn't let herself be crushed by one moment, one person, no matter how powerful they were. Her dreams, her belief in herself, could not be taken away by the sting of rejection. As the warmth of the coffee spread through her, Maya's thoughts began to clear. She realized something: Kim Kardashian wasn't the key to her success. She had placed so much value on the opinion of someone who had never known her, someone who had no idea of the struggles and sacrifices Maya had endured just to get this far. Kim had dismissed her without a second thought, but Maya had spent years proving herself in ways Kim never could understand. In that moment, Maya made a decision. She would stop waiting for someone to give her a chance. She wouldn't let the rejection of one person define her future. She had already proven her worth through the battles she had fought and the obstacles she had overcome. No one, not Kim Kardashian or anyone else, had the power to take that away from her. Maya stood up from the table, her shoulders straighter, her head held high. She threw a few bills down on the counter to pay for her coffee and walked out of the cafe with a renewed sense of purpose. The cold night air no longer felt like a weight, it felt like the first gust of wind on the eve of something new. She had a long road ahead of her, but now, more than ever, she was ready to take it. The rejection she had faced didn't have to be the end of her story. It could be the beginning of something bigger, something that came from within her, from the strength and resilience she had built over the years. She didn't need Kim Kardashian's approval. She didn't need anyone's approval. All she needed was to believe in herself again. Maya made a vow to herself right there on the streets of New York, under the flickering lights and the towering skyscrapers that seemed to mock her ambition. She would rise. She would succeed. And she would do it her way, without looking back. But little did she know, this was only the beginning of her journey. The universe had something in store for her that she could never have imagined. Something that would change her life in ways she never expected. The days that followed were a blur of frustration and confusion for Maya. The sting of Kim Kardashian's rejection still haunted her every step, each rejection letter from various companies only adding to the weight of her disbelief. How could she have been so naive? The thought of asking someone like Kim Kardashian for a job had felt so right at the time, so full of potential. But now, with her heart still aching from the public humiliation, Maya was beginning to question everything she had ever believed about herself. She had spent countless hours scrolling through social media, scrolling through Kim's Instagram, reading articles about her business empire, and even rewatching the moments from the gala in her mind. Kim, the woman who had built a brand based on self-promotion, persistence, and calculated risks, had, in a single moment, made Maya feel like an insignificant speck in the vast world of social media and fame. The weight of it all pushed her down until she could barely get out of bed in the mornings. The rejection had shattered her confidence, and every day felt like another attempt to hide the pieces of herself that were breaking apart. She tried to distract herself with menial tasks, coffee with old friends, aimless walks through Central Park, but nothing could fill the emptiness that had lodged itself deep in her chest. The life she had dreamed of, the success she had worked for, felt like it had slipped further away. With each passing day, Maya wondered if it was all just a fantasy, a dream meant for other people, people like Kim Kardashian, who seemed to have the world at her feet. But one late afternoon, something shifted. It was a quiet Sunday when Maya finally decided to pick herself up. She had spent the morning at a local coffee shop, furiously working on her resume and sending out job applications, but none of it seemed to be getting anywhere. Frustrated and exhausted, she looked around and saw that the cafe wasn't particularly busy. At the far corner table, she noticed a woman sitting alone, her long hair cascading over her shoulders as she reviewed something on her phone. Maya's heart skipped a beat. It was her. The very woman who had humiliated her only days ago. Kim Kardashian. Maya froze for a moment, not sure whether she should acknowledge her or just leave. The memories of the gala flooded back. She could feel the heat rise to her cheeks, a mixture of anger, embarrassment, and uncertainty. But as she sat there in the quiet cafe, Maya felt a spark of something else, something that made her stand up and walk toward Kim's table. The words she had rehearsed so many times before now felt distant, but Maya knew she had to face the situation head-on. She walked up to Kim, her breath caught in her throat. The reality of the moment settled around her like a cloak. Kim looked up from her phone, her expression unreadable. "Excuse me," Maya said, her voice steadier than she had expected. "I know this might be awkward, but I need to speak with you." Kim raised an eyebrow, but Maya pressed on. "I was at the gala the other night. I asked for your help in front of everyone, and your response, well, it wasn't exactly what I was hoping for." Kim's eyes narrowed slightly, as though trying to place Maya's face. A flicker of recognition passed over her features, but she remained silent, waiting for Maya to continue. Maya took a deep breath and continued. "I want you to know that I didn't ask for help because I thought I was entitled to it. I asked because I'm trying to build something for myself, just like you did. I'm not asking for charity. I'm asking for a chance. And I know you're a busy person, and maybe you didn't see the value in me in that moment. But I've learned something from that experience. You taught me something valuable. That moment showed me that if I want to succeed, I have to work harder. I have to prove myself. So I want to thank you for that." There was a long silence between them. Maya's words hung in the air like a challenge, like a call to action. Kim looked at Maya, her expression unreadable. Then, slowly, she placed her phone down on the table and leaned back in her chair, regarding Maya carefully. "You're a brave girl," she said finally, her voice calm. "Not many people would do what you just did. Most would have walked away, too embarrassed to even look me in the eye. But you came back. And you didn't come here to beg for help. You came here because you believe in yourself." Maya nodded, her heart pounding in her chest. Kim was speaking to her, really speaking to her. She had expected the coldness from the gala to continue, but instead, she was seeing something different, something she hadn't expected. Kim smiled slightly. "I respect that. You're not afraid to face rejection. In fact, I think you've got a lot of potential. Maybe more than you realize." Maya's breath caught in her throat. Was Kim actually considering offering her something? Kim continued, "I've got a lot of people working for me, but not all of them have the guts you just showed me. I like people who take risks, who aren't afraid to fail and keep going. I'll be honest, I don't know what I can do for you right now. But I do have a job opening in one of my companies. It's not glamorous work, but if you're willing to start at the bottom and prove yourself, I think we can talk." Maya stood there in shock, her mind racing. She had never expected this. In that moment, everything she had doubted, her worth, her dreams, felt like they were about to come true. She had taken the leap, faced her fears, and had done the one thing she had never thought she could do. She had made herself visible, and Kim had seen her. "I'll take it," Maya replied, her voice steady but filled with awe. "I'll do whatever it takes." Kim nodded, a satisfied smile crossing her face. "Good. I'll have my assistant get in touch with you. But remember, this is just the beginning. The work won't be easy, but if you're willing to fight for it, there's no limit to what you can accomplish." Maya felt a wave of gratitude rush over her. She had started this journey with nothing but hope and belief, and now, she was walking away with something even more valuable, an opportunity. Kim had given her a chance, and it was up to her to make the most of it. As she left the cafe, Maya felt lighter than she had in weeks. The rejection, the humiliation, the doubts, they were all behind her now. What had once seemed like an insurmountable mountain was now just a small bump in the road. She was no longer the person who had begged for help. She was the person who had fought for her future and won. The road ahead would be tough, but Maya knew one thing for sure: she was ready for whatever came next. Maya could hardly believe the turn her life had taken. Just a few weeks ago, she had stood before Kim Kardashian in the grand ballroom, asking for a chance in front of hundreds of people. She had felt the weight of rejection so deeply that she had nearly lost herself in the humiliation. But now, as she sat in her small apartment late one night, the phone call from Kim's assistant still fresh in her mind, Maya's heart was filled with a renewed sense of purpose. The job Kim had offered her was far from glamorous. It wasn't the high-profile position she had dreamed of, nor was it anything remotely close to the life she had once envisioned. It was an entry-level role in one of Kim's many companies, something that required long hours, relentless attention to detail, and a determination to prove herself. But Maya didn't care. After everything she had endured, this opportunity felt like a lifeline. For the first time in a long while, Maya felt hopeful. Her mornings no longer started with despair, and the weight in her chest had lifted, replaced by the anticipation of what lay ahead. She had been given a chance, and she wasn't about to squander it. She spent her days learning everything she could about the company, about Kim's brand, and about the world of business that seemed so far removed from her humble beginnings. Every task, no matter how small, she approached with fierce determination. She made notes, she asked questions, and most importantly, she never allowed herself to become discouraged. She had been at the bottom before. She knew what it was like to feel invisible, to feel like nothing more than a face in the crowd. But now, she was determined to rise. As the weeks passed, Maya's commitment to her work began to pay off. Her boss, who had initially been skeptical about her, started to notice her work ethic and dedication. Maya's attention to detail, her willingness to go above and beyond, and her refusal to settle for mediocrity set her apart from the others. She quickly became known in the office as the go-getter, the one who never said no, no matter how impossible the task seemed. But the most significant change was in Maya herself. She had gone from a woman who had begged for help, to someone who was taking control of her own destiny. The rejection she had faced in front of Kim Kardashian no longer had the power to define her. Maya had learned that success was not about waiting for someone to give you a chance. It was about creating your own opportunities and proving to the world that you deserved them. One afternoon, as Maya sat at her desk, a message pinged on her phone. It was an invitation to a meeting with Kim herself. Maya's heart skipped a beat. She hadn't seen or spoken to Kim since that fateful day at the gala, but now, here she was, on her radar again. She quickly composed herself, smoothing down her blouse and gathering her things before heading to Kim's office. When she arrived, Kim's assistant ushered her into a sleek, modern conference room. The walls were lined with black and white portraits of Kim's most iconic moments, and the room smelled faintly of jasmine and fresh flowers. Maya sat at the large table, her palms sweating as she waited for Kim to enter. It felt surreal. This was the moment she had dreamed about, but it was so different from what she had imagined. She wasn't sitting here as a fan or a beggar. She was sitting here as an equal, as someone who had proven herself through hard work and dedication. A few moments later, Kim walked in, her presence commanding the room. She smiled when she saw Maya, but this time, the smile wasn't the cold, dismissive one from that night. This was genuine, warm, almost as if Kim had been waiting for this moment too. "Maya, I'm glad you could make it," Kim said, her voice calm and confident. "I've been hearing great things about you." Maya felt a rush of pride at those words, but she didn't let it go to her head. She was here to listen, to learn, to grow. "Thank you, Kim," Maya replied. I've been working hard to prove myself, and I appreciate the opportunity you gave me. Kim nodded, sitting down across from her. I've been watching your progress closely, and I have to say, I'm impressed. You've really come a long way since we first met. And it's clear to me that you have a lot of potential. Maya's heart swelled with gratitude. This was what she had been working for: recognition, validation, and a chance to continue building the life she had always wanted. But there was something else, something deeper in Kim's words. Maya could sense that there was more to this meeting than just a routine check-in. Kim leaned forward slightly, her eyes locking with Maya's. I want to offer you something, she said, her voice steady and firm. You've earned my respect, and I want to offer you a promotion. But it's not just any promotion. I want you to take on a leadership role within my team. You've shown that you're capable of so much more, and I believe you have the potential to help shape the future of this company. Maya's breath caught in her throat. A leadership role? She had only just started on this journey, and now Kim was offering her an opportunity that most people could only dream of. This was the moment Maya had been waiting for, the culmination of everything she had worked for. But as the words sank in, Maya felt a shift in her perspective. She realized that the true value of this moment wasn't the promotion itself, it was the recognition of her growth, of how far she had come. She had gone from asking for a job to becoming someone who could lead, someone who could inspire others to rise above their circumstances. Maya smiled, her heart swelling with pride and gratitude. I accept, Kim. I won't let you down. Kim smiled back, her eyes gleaming with something Maya couldn't quite place. I know you won't. I'm excited to see what you'll do next. As Maya left Kim's office, her heart was racing with excitement, but there was also a sense of peace. She had come full circle, from the girl who had begged for a chance to the woman who had earned her place. But as she walked down the hallway, a thought flickered in the back of her mind. Had Kim been watching her all along? She hadn't just been offered this opportunity because of her hard work. Had Kim seen something in her that Maya hadn't recognized in herself? The answer was clear as she stepped into the elevator. Maya's journey had only just begun. And there was more to come. Maya stood in the elevator, her mind racing with the possibilities that lay ahead. She had come so far in such a short time. From the painful rejection at the gala to the humbling opportunity in Kim Kardashian's company, she had felt her life shift in ways she could never have predicted. Everything had been leading up to this moment, the promotion, the recognition, the future she had worked tirelessly for. But as the elevator doors closed with a soft chime, Maya felt a strange sense of unease creeping in. It was a feeling she couldn't quite place, a lingering doubt that gnawed at the edges of her mind. Something felt off. Maybe it was the sheer speed at which her life had changed. Maybe it was the weight of what was to come next. But no matter how hard she tried to shake it, she couldn't ignore the feeling that this wasn't the end of her journey. In fact, it might just be the beginning of something even more unexpected. She had been given a leadership position, but Maya wasn't sure if she was truly ready. Her promotion was a dream come true, but now that it was here, she wondered if she could handle it. Could she lead a team? Could she live up to Kim's expectations? Could she carry the weight of this newfound responsibility? As she walked to her desk later that day, she shook off her doubts and reminded herself that she had already proven she could rise to the occasion. She had fought for this. She had earned it. And now it was time to push through any lingering insecurities and prove to herself that she was worthy of the success she had achieved. Days turned into weeks, and Maya threw herself into her new role with unrelenting passion. She worked tirelessly, refining strategies, developing ideas, and building relationships within the company. Her team, once skeptical of her because of her lack of experience, now looked to her for guidance. They respected her, admired her work ethic, and, most importantly, trusted her. Maya had become the leader she had once dreamed of becoming. But just as everything seemed to be falling into place, the strange feeling that had been gnawing at her began to resurface. It started with small things, unexplained emails, cryptic messages from Kim's assistant, an occasional odd look from her colleagues, but soon, it escalated. Maya started receiving phone calls from an unknown number, always at odd hours of the night, but when she answered, no one would be there. At first, she brushed it off, thinking it was just a coincidence. But the calls became more frequent, and the silence on the other end of the line began to feel like a warning. It wasn't long before Maya found herself standing in front of Kim's office once again, a sense of dread swirling in her stomach. The last time she had been here, she had felt like she was on top of the world. But now, as she knocked on Kim's door, her heart pounded with uncertainty. Kim's assistant ushered her in, and Maya entered the sleek, modern office with cautious steps. Kim was sitting at her desk, her expression unreadable as she glanced up at Maya. "Maya," Kim said, her voice calm. "I've been following your progress. You've done exceptionally well." Maya felt a rush of pride, but that nagging unease still hung over her. She tried to push it away, focusing instead on Kim's words. "Thank you. I'm doing everything I can to prove myself." Kim leaned back in her chair, her fingers lightly tapping on the desk. "I'm glad to hear that. But there's something I need to discuss with you." Maya's stomach tightened. She had expected this. It was too good to be true. The promotion, the praise, it all seemed to have come too easily. And now, she was beginning to realize that the path she had fought for wasn't as straightforward as it seemed. "What is it?" Maya asked, her voice steady, but her nerves were threatening to betray her. Kim's gaze softened. "Maya, you've done well, but there's something I think you need to understand. When I offered you this position, I saw something in you. Something I admired. You were willing to fight for what you wanted. But now that you're here, I need you to know that the world you've entered is not as simple as you think." Maya's heart skipped a beat. What was Kim talking about? "There are people in this industry," Kim continued, "who will stop at nothing to tear you down. They'll pretend to be your friend, but they're only out for themselves. And I need to know if you're ready for that. If you're really ready to handle what comes with success." Maya's mind spun. Was Kim warning her? Was she being tested in some way? "I am ready," Maya said, her voice more confident than she felt. "I've fought for this, and I won't back down now." Kim smiled, but it wasn't the same smile from their earlier meeting. This time, there was something cold in it. "Good," she said. "But you need to understand one more thing, Maya. Not everything is what it seems. I didn't offer you this position because I think you're the best candidate. I offered it to you because I knew you would work hard, but more importantly, because I saw something in you that you didn't even know you had." Maya's confusion deepened. What did Kim mean? Kim leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. "I knew you were hungry for success. But what I didn't realize was how much you wanted to prove yourself to me. And that's exactly what I wanted." Maya's heart stopped. Was she being manipulated this entire time? Kim's voice softened. "I knew you'd come back. I knew you'd work harder than anyone else. And now, you've become exactly what I wanted, a symbol. A symbol of the kind of determination I want my company to embody." Maya's head spun. All this time, she had believed that Kim had given her the opportunity because she saw potential in Maya. But now, Maya understood something entirely different. Kim hadn't just seen potential in her, she had used her as a pawn in her own game. Maya was a product, a person who could be shaped, molded, and discarded when it was no longer convenient. She had been part of a strategy all along. For a moment, Maya felt her world crumble around her. All the work, the sacrifices, the time she had spent proving herself, had it all been for nothing? Had Kim used her to fulfill some agenda of her own? But then, as the weight of realization sank in, Maya's inner strength kicked in. She wasn't going to let Kim's manipulation define her. She wasn't a pawn in anyone's game. She had come too far to let this be the end of her story. With a slow, steady breath, Maya straightened her shoulders and met Kim's gaze. "I understand," she said, her voice firm. "But I'm not your symbol. I'm not here to be used. I'm here because I believe in my own worth. And I don't need anyone's approval to succeed." Kim stared at her for a moment, her eyes narrowing, but she didn't speak. Maya turned on her heel and walked out of the office, her mind clearer than ever. She had learned something important in that moment. Success wasn't about validation from the people around you. It was about finding the strength within yourself to keep moving forward, no matter the obstacles. Maya had asked for a job in public, and Kim's answer had shocked her. But in the end, it was Maya who had the last word. She wasn't a puppet, and she wasn't going to let anyone control her destiny. She had taken control of her own narrative, and nothing, not even Kim Kardashian, could take that away from her. As Maya walked down the hallway, she realized something profound. The journey had never been about the job or the recognition. It had always been about the person she had become along the way. And now, she was finally free to define her own path.